shock. I could not digest what had happened right in front of my eyes. It was so impossible, yet it had happened. I had been in this town for over a week and had not set foot outside the cabin that I had rented for my residence. The entire scene would play in my mind over and over again, keeping me up at night and restless in the days. The fact that I had witnessed a gruesome murder and the fact that the murderer himself had been murdered a few months ago did not sit with me. It made my brain hurt. My whole life felt like it was a dream. That constant fright of the trucker appearing before me sent chills up my spine, taking away my peace of mind. I kept on thinking about it. I kept on trying to make sense of everything. I did some research on the internet. I found folk tales that had talked about certain incidents that people had experienced. They were said to have witnessed certain undead sightings of the people from their tribes that had recently been deceased. Here I started to wonder if so many people had seen it, maybe it was possible. I read another article which said that souls stayed behind on Earth because they had some unfinished business or otherwise they were simply not at peace. Then I wondered what might possibly be the reason that I kept seeing the trucker. I wondered why he had murdered Joe. I then began to think on a more positive note. I thought to myself that if the trucker had wanted to inflict pain or any kind of harm on me, he would already have done so. That was what gave me the courage to come out of my hiding. I started early in the morning. I started initially on the murder of Joe. I wanted to know more about Joe as a person, so I went around the town as it was quite a small one and basically everyone knew each other. The townspeople were not fans of Joe. They claimed him to be, and I quote, a heartless meanie. He was the reason that the bad people coming in our town. I am glad he's gone. Honestly, I was so shocked. I concluded that Joe had it coming for himself. Almost all the people hated him and were glad to have gotten rid of him. It was then that I decided to talk to the police and ask about the investigations. They refused to speak to me for confidential reasons, which upset me a lot, but then I offered them cash, which they greedily took and started telling me about the background story. They told me how brutally Joe had been murdered and his body mutilated as if someone deliberately spread his blood all over the floor and walls, and his throat was cut deep enough that even the bone was visible. The police said that the bone was severed and roughly cut, as if with superhuman strength. They even showed me the picture of the entire scene, and it was a terrible sight to behold. I asked for soft copies of those images to observe them closely, for I assumed I might find some important details, and I was right. My journalist eyes looked deeply into everything, and they did the same here. I observed how, there, in the blood, something was scribbled, as if hastily. Someone had written something in the blood. As I focused on it by zooming in, I could make out a few numbers and the word help written on the wall. I figured the digits were some kind of address. When I conducted further research, I got the address of a certain building that I came to know later had been abandoned for many years. I decided to call it a day and went to bed, in hope for a fresh start the coming morning. That night, I had a rather odd dream. I was sitting in that same red truck that the dead trucker owned, and he was driving me somewhere. Everything was so calm. No chaos and fears were in my mind. He drove me to a rusty, old-looking mansion. What caught me off guard was that he drove around the main entrance and stopped in the backyard of that mansion. The trucker got out and started walking slowly. I decided to follow him towards what seemed like a door leading to a basement. He stopped right in front of it and looked back at me, making eye contact, and pointed towards the door. I asked him what was in there. He screamed in a horrifying manner, as if there were multiple voices screaming beside his own. Then his mouth stretched so far that it made a huge crackling sound, and he came closer in light speed towards me, inches away from my face. That was when I woke up, scared to death but determined to unwind the mystery of this very trucker. It was early in the morning when I set out to the given address. When I reached there, to my surprise, it was the same mansion that I had seen in my dream. I must clear it out that I had never in my life seen it before. Surely this was not a coincidence. I, just like I had in my dream, drove around it and went to that door which led to the basement. I broke the padlock and looked in. Someone pushed me inside and I went tumbling down the stairs. My body ached, and when I looked up, it was the trucker, with that same sad expression. He shook his head slightly, as if in disagreement, and closed the door. I screamed at him to stop, but it was too late. I heard his heavy footsteps walk away slowly. I looked around in the dark basement that reeked. No one would come here for days, maybe weeks, or maybe never. I was badly stuck.